say a worrying development, it means that the development will have an impact on South Asia. It will have an impact on South Asia because South Asia is multicultural. And in this case, it's about minorities. The Bangladesh interim government has constituted a 9-member reform commission to review and evaluate the constitution. However, the commission has excluded Hindus and other indigenous people from the panel. The Rights and Risk Analysis Group released a report highlighting the intensification of human rights violation against Hindus and other minorities. Suhas Chakma of the group said that the Muhammad Yunus's worldview excludes vulnerable communities, accusing the Yunus-led government of being soft-faced for Islamists in Bangladesh. He pointed out that such exclusionary practices were not seen under former leaders Irshad, Khaleda Zia or Sheikh Hasina. The exclusion of Hindus from the Constitutional Reform Commission comes after a wave of attacks on the community in Bangladesh. From September 19th to October 1st, illegal settlers and the Bangladesh Army carried out organized assaults on the indigenous people in the Chittagong Hill Tract, targeting their shops and businesses. 75 indigenous people were injured and 142 homes, shops and Buddhist temples were looted, destroyed or set on fire. Following these attacks, indigenous people were expelled from districts and sub-district markets dominated by illegal settlers, barring them from economic activities in urban Chittagong Hill Tract areas due to segregation, communal tension and biased law enforcement. Additionally, Bangladesh government passed an order seeking of an audit of the Hindu officers, widely seen as a measure to racially profile the minority Hindus in the government. The violence was also witnessed when the students had come out. Pratham Aulo newspaper between August 5th and August 20th accounted for the violence against Hindus. 1,068 homes and businesses belonging to them were attacked and destroyed. Now, issue is, if you want to reform the constitution, it has to be representative of the communities. If you want to reform the constitution, it has to reflect each and every segment. It has to be participatory in nature. On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risk Analysis Group. Suhas, point blank, I'll start. Point blank. What does this decision of Yunus tell us about him?
Well, it shows that Muhammad Yunus is not the peacemaker which people usually think. I think there is a perception that Muhammad Yunus had received the Nobel Peace Prize. So he is somebody who is liberal, who has a broader view of the world, and he has an inclusive view. But if you look at the exclusion of the indigenous communities, who are about 1.6 million and about 16 million Hindu and other religious minorities, when he excludes these two distinct groups apart from the majority Muslims in Bangladesh, it shows that he is an exclusionist. So he doesn't believe in inclusion of people, inclusion of the vulnerable people. And it's not only, I would say, the religious minorities and the indigenous people. As I said, there is only one woman who has been included. So it shows that Muhammad Yunus actually the soft face of the Jamaat-e-Islami. So he is not a liberal, which the Western diplomats taught and supported. He is actually the face of the Jamaat-e-Islami, which wants to come to power. And at the end of the day, he had to show it, and he could not keep it for a long period, because the moment the first task of the government, which is actually not permitted, or he is not even mandated to this to carry out this particular reform, because his main task is actually to organize the elections so that there could be an elected government, that the elected government could decide what is good or bad for the country. Instead of that, he has gone into reform of the country without any mandate, without suspending the constitution, and nobody knows where he gets these powers from under the constitution of Bangladesh, which has not been suspended as on date. So when he had to take one concrete step, and the first step, the first action which he has done is to exclude and to show to the rest of the world that he is actually fundamentalist, who has been roaming around as a liberal, as a peacemaker, which is absolutely uncalled for.
Madam Sikri, wasn't the job of the interim government was to organize elections and that's about it?
Well, according to the constitution of Bangladesh, the earlier constitution, they had this provision for what they call the caretaker government, which is now being called an interim government. And the only job of that caretaker government was to stay for 90 days. And in that time, to organize a free and fair election, a fully participatory election, and then hand over to the new government and leave. Actually, this very provision for the caretaker government was abolished because the High Court of Bangladesh said that a system of caretaker government is not cannot coexist with the parliamentary democracy, because the government in Bangladesh in a parliamentary democracy cannot be an unelected government. This is an unelected government. It's a nominated government, and actually it's not even been nominated by the president. It's the students who say they have nominated it. So it's a very worrisome situation, because there is no question of any kind of constitutional reform to be undertaken by this government. But I can tell you that in response to this, global outcry against the violence against the religious minorities in Bangladesh, the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Christians, there was even a big outcry in Bangladesh to ban the Durga Puja. They shouldn't be on public land. They shouldn't immerse the idol in the rivers. This will pollute the rivers. Then there was, the attack on the Buddhists in Khagrachari, which Mr. Chakma has spoken about. It was terrible. And in fact, the people of Khagrachari had decided to cancel their big festival, which is held in November every year, the Buddhist festival, the Pratin Shivardhan festival, and they said they were going to cancel it. Then the interim government got together and said, no, we're going to give protection, we mustn't cancel the festivals and so on. But I must tell you what happened yesterday in Bangladesh. On the 9th of October, the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, who's the head of Jamaat-e-Islami, gave a press conference and a meeting where he called all the intellectuals and the people of the group. And he has announced constitutional reform for Bangladesh. And he has announced what he wants to be in the new constitution of Bangladesh. Now, this is just one party, but obviously it is clear that the new constitution that they want to see is an exclusive constitution. It does not include the minorities at all, because in the program that was given yesterday, the project proposal that was given yesterday by the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, it was called the state reform proposal, state constitutional reform proposal. There was no mention of any minorities in Bangladesh. No mention of any religious minorities or any other minorities of Bangladesh. And it was specified that, how that they will look after the Islamic religion and how it will be done, what the Ministry of Religious Affairs will do, how all books which aren't proper should be cancelled, and how the earlier constitution was described as made in India. That even yesterday he said that in the press conference in Dhaka. He said the 1972 constitution was made in India, which is entirely incorrect, because the 1972 constitution was drawn up by the experts of Bangladesh, the legal experts of Bangladesh, including Kamal Hussain, including Barrister Amirul Islam, and many other eminent legal luminaries of Bangladesh at that time, had got together to draw up the Constitution of Bangladesh. Each and every meeting of the Constituent Assembly was held in Dhaka. None of these meetings had anything to do with India. India had nothing at all to do with the drawing up of the Constitution of Bangladesh, because these experts, Kamal Hussain, Barrister Amirul Islam and others, they're international experts. They know all the constitutions of the world. So they studied all those and then drew up the Constitution of Bangladesh of 1972, which was adopted at the end of that year and has stood them in very good stead for all these decades, for half a century. And now, yesterday, the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami comes up and says that's a made in India constitution. So I think it's very worrisome for 2 or 3 reasons. A, this constitution, what he's proposing, what the Amir is proposing, is de-recognizing the pluralistic, secular, multi-ethnic, multi-religious structure of Bangladesh. That is the one thing. And second thing, by saying that it's a made in India constitution, he's saying as though because it's in India, it cannot be accepted. So, this kind of, at every stage, the Jamaat-e-Islami is drawing upon its very strong anti-India sentiments, is trying to, instill these anti-India sentiments into the people of Bangladesh. And this is really worrisome, what has happened yesterday. I fully agree with what Mr. Subhash Chakma has said. And I do not know how this will proceed, because there is no authority, no mandate for the interim government to draw up a new constitution. But on its own, without any authority from the people of Bangladesh, a constitutional reform commission has been established. At first, there was another person who was made the chair of the commission, and that was cancelled. And then now a professor, American Bangladesh professor, Ali Riaz, has been made the chair, and some journalists, some senior journalists have been included in this Constitutional Reform Commission. So I really don't know how this is going to be accepted by the people of Bangladesh, and what the response to this press conference by the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, Shafiqur Rahman, was. I think it's something to be watched out for.
I'm also joined by Salim Samad, senior journalist and columnist from Bangladesh. Mr. Samad, thank you for joining us. In this commission,
Sure.
Thank you, sir. In this commission, there are no minorities. I mean, so if you want to redo the constitutions, there have been various forums in past where similar activities were done. For example, the Constituent Assembly of India between 1947 to 1952, where the entire constitution got debated by hundreds of people. And in this commission, you don't have representation from smaller communities. Why?
Thank you. First of all, the committee in 1972, when the constitution was drafted, you never questioned why the other people are not in that committee. It is once the committee has made a draft or made a recommendation, only then they will elicit response from different communities. Even I can say, let me tell you one thing very frankly. The author of the Indian Constitution is my grandfather. He has a contribution in that way, and he has a signature on that Constitution of India. So I will not go into that details of Delhi's Constitution when my grandfather was a part. But I'm talking about the 1972. Even when Sheikh Hasina in 2011 had redone the Constitution, there was no committee to include everybody. The draft now it is put on online at the website, but maybe it will be on the website, and then there will be a cross section of people who will be debating on it in different parts of the country. That is what is it. This is just a commission. The commission may rewrite it, or may totally reject it, and it also has to be understood that this constitution has been doctored by all the regimes. You cannot find a single regime who has not touched the constitution, and it is totally, now the constitution is absolutely. It is very difficult to understand whether this democracy and transparency and accountability could be ensured by this constitution. For example, like if you talking about the okay, my Suharman knows much better than me that in that 1972 constitution there was no word of the ethnic minorities in Bangladesh, and not a single word that has not been mentioned. So that constitution has to be definitely rewritten. It was rewritten twice to include the ethnic minorities and other even the cultural minorities. So it took several decades to understand that who should be included and who should be very much in the constitution. So if you look into this constitution, definitely be rewritten. I would rather put the word that this should be absolutely has to be rewritten. Nothing should be edited, because this constitution has so much undemocratic clause, like crossing the floor, for example. There is nothing which is bans crossing the floor. So you cannot. Definitely that is one of the reasons the ruling party had always, all through the last 52 years, the ruling party always dominated what they wanted to adopt or include or edit the constitution. And like the freedom of expression, for example, the freedom of expression is totally, there is no clause to guarantee the additional is that 3 amendments has been brought into the Cyber Security Act, which had totally throttled the media freedom and freedom of expression, and that is in the constitution. So what do you want this constitution to be edited? This constitution has to be rewritten. And of course, the the religious minorities, especially the people in the Chittagong Hill Tract, the Garos and the other communities who had fought the war. I mean, I'm not talking about the Chittagong Hill Tract. The Garos and the other communities also had fought the war, and many of them have received gallantry awards. So they will definitely have a space to debate on that issue once there is a recommendation. Recommendation is definitely a committee with, I understand, maybe they are expert. I'm not an expert. So
okay.
My name is not there, fortunately.
Okay. Mr. Samad, before I came to you, Mr. Suhas Chakma said that the fact that the other communities are not there, it is also a reflection on Mr. Yunus' outlook. He has become the soft face of Jamaat-e-Islami. Your comments?
I will not comment on Suhas Chakma because he has much better insight. But I will not say I condemn or but specifically speaking, as I personally know Professor Yunus very well, I was the first journalist to report on his Grameen Bank. That was 32 years ago. What I have seen, he's absolutely a secular person by practice, by even the food and living style is very much secular. And I still have some trust on him that he will definitely not listen to the Jamaat-e-Islami or the Islamist party. And let me tell you one thing, the Jamaat-e-Islami is not a big factor in Bangladesh. The Hifazat-e-Islam is a big factor. And I don't know why the speakers in the panel doesn't talk about Hifazat-e-Islam, who has totally ransacked this country after the 5th of August, that not only demolishing all the independence, the culture, the independence sculpture, the sculpture of the Liberation War, but also damaged even the not only the temples, but also the different Islamic shrines. It's all done by Hifazat-e-Islam.
Okay.
And one thing has not been mentioned, and I will not say that they did the right thing, but today, officially, beside the law enforcing agency, the Jamaat-e-Islami is guarding all the Durga Puja pandals all over the country.
Okay. Suhas, please respond to it.
No, I think we have reached such a situation where it's not possible to carry out any kind of attacks on the religious minorities during pujas, because the spotlight is on the community or on the country at that particular point of time. I think what I will be worried about is whether the same system persists when the elections are announced. Because what we have seen both in the Chittagong tracks and elsewhere, usually you need an excuse. So that excuse could be, the election which might come up at certain point of time. And at that point of time, political violence will be used as the justification for attacks on minorities. And that's my fear, and we have seen in Chittagong tracks in two cases. I think in one particular case was that there was a FIR filed by wife of Mamun, Mukta Mamun, who had in her FIR clearly stated
Suhas, you should also address this. Mr. Samad says that Jamaat is not a big factor, and second, he's saying that Jamaat is protecting puja pandals. I want you to answer that.
No, that's what I'm saying. Because there is international spotlight at this point of time because of Durga Puja, and because of the boycott or because of the cancellation of the religious programs in the Chittagong tracks, because of the ban of the tourists in the Chittagong tracks. So there is already enough international spotlight because of what happened from 19th September to 1st October. But that doesn't necessarily reflect the realities. And what I am worried about is when, as I had mentioned last time, that when you are a government head or head of the government, you have certain responsibilities. So certain attacks took place after the fall of Sheikh Hasina, and they were reported by Protomalo itself. It's not the report of anybody else. Without the investigation into each of these violence incidents, Dr. Yunus went on to say that these were attacks which were carried out because of the allegiance with the Awami League. Now, without investigation, without registration of the FIR, and without finding or some kind of reports which were submitted or to be submitted before the court, etc., how could you arrive at the conclusion that these attacks actually took place because of the allegiance with the army. So that's why I'm saying that, the test of the puddings in the eating, we have to see after the pujas. Pujas is not the right time to carry out any kind of political violence.
Okay.
So that's why I'll remain what to say.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We can all have a, we can all sit together and agree to disagree. But there is an issue here, and there is an issue of related to the a state which has seen an upheaval. Madam Sikri, I have two questions. Is Dr. Yunus going the same path the way Aung San Suu Kyi went in Myanmar? One. Second, Madam, Mr. Samad said that no, you cannot, the JAIM is not the big, the Jamaat is not a big factor. Is it correct? Do you concur, or you have a contrary position on it?
Okay, well, thank you for those questions. Let me first say that I'd like to point out to Mr. Samad that he spoke about the 2011 amendments made by former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in the Constitution, which renders it invalid. But I'd like to remind him that in 2011, there was an elected parliament, and that parliament had been elected in 2009. The elections were held at the end of 2008. And though in those elections, which are considered even today to be by far the freest and fairest in Bangladesh in the last more than 50 years, in those elections, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was elected by a 3/4 majority. And it was that government which in 2011 introduced those amendments or whatever they were and adopted them. What I'm trying to say is that in a parliamentary democracy, first of all, in a democracy, any kind of democracy, no reforms can be done by a handful of 5 or 10 people who are nominated by a group who has no constitutional legality. And then they're saying that they'll be done even, and these reforms of the constitution and so many other things will precede the elections. So how is it that this is going to be a people's decision? That's number one. You asked me about comparing Professor Muhammad Yunus with Aung San Suu Kyi. Well, I think if you're saying that the army is in charge, and that's what the army at one time had favored Aung San Suu Kyi and then fell out with her, and then Aung San Suu Kyi was removed and is now, of course, the junta is completely separate. I cannot predict what is the future, but certainly there's a lot of talk in Bangladesh that Professor Muhammad Yunus will soon be becoming the president of Bangladesh.
Yunus has autonomy, madam. I mean, you have served there, you understand the development. Does he have an autonomy there? He has not been elected by people of Bangladesh.
No, he's not. That's exactly what I'm saying. If you say that it's been nominated by somebody, there's a group there now called the Interim government. All they have to do is to organize elections within 90 days, but there's no talk of any election. The second aspect, what you said was about the
Jamaat-e-Islami. Mr. Samad said is not the important factor. They are the ones who are defending the puja pandals. So I'm putting that question to you, madam.
I'm saying that first of all, the Jamaat-e-Islami is acting here in Bangladesh together with all the other Islamist parties. In fact, there is a move within Bangladesh today to create a coordinated party which will bring together all the the Islamist parties. There is the Jamaat-e-Islami, then there is the Hifazat-e-Islam. Now the Hifazat-e-Islam is represented in the interim government. The Hifazat-e-Islam, is the member of the interim government. And Mr. Samad is saying that Hifazat-e-Islam did all the damage to the pandals, all the damage to the Hindus, every killing of the Buddhists was done by the Hifazat-e-Islam. But that institution is represented within the interim government. So I am not able to understand, is he suggesting that it's the interim government which did all these attacks on the Hindus and on the Buddhists and on the Christians? And Butari is in the office of Professor Muhammad Yunus. He is the closest advisor to the Professor Muhammad Yunus. And Professor Muhammad Yunus declared in New York during his recent visit there at a public function organized by the Global Clinton Initiative that these events in Bangladesh were very meticulously designed. And he pointed to the representative of the Hizb ut-Tahrir, Mr. Mahfouz Alam, and who is now in his own office, that he is the one who did it all. So, it is difficult to understand what is this. And I would like to also say one more thing, that in the recent interview which Professor Muhammad Yunus gave to the Pratham Alo newspaper in Bangladesh, he actually admitted at the end of 2 months of the interim government being in charge in Bangladesh, 60 days out of the 90 are already over, he admitted that the law and order situation is not good. He said that this is a very difficult and worrisome situation. So I think this is, all these things put together point very closely to the fact that we don't know who is in charge. If it's the army in charge, or is it the interim government in charge? Who is the police reporting to?
Okay.
Because the army has now been given magistracy powers and police powers. So is the army in charge? But then the law and order situation is still not coming under control. So who is it that is causing all these difficulties? In fact, according to the statement which Mr. Suhas Chakma had put out, and I was there, he has said that the Buddhist community has said that the army was a part of the attack on their community. They have said so. This is their statement. So, it really is very difficult to understand while Professor Muhammad Yunus is admitting that the law and order situation is very poor. There are people who are blaming the army for it. We have Mr. Samad who is blaming the Hifadhat-e-Islam, but Hifadhat-e-Islam is in the interim government. It is really very difficult to understand and to pinpoint what is going on, except that there seems to be complete lack of law and order, a very anarchic situation.
Mr. Samad, I have a question. There are a number of points you have raised. Why isn't there talk about the elections? I remember, when you came to my program, during the protest, you were the first people to tell me, Kartikeya, let me tell you, interim government is about getting the elections done. It's about organizing the elections. They don't have, I was asking you questions about what will they do, can they do this? And you said the only mandate is to get the damn elections done and get a new government. Now the government is doing a lot of the things, but there is no message in terms of when the election schedule comes into action. Is it going to happen in November, December, January? Any clarity on that, sir? Can you unmute yourself?
No, I'm not mute. Somebody must have done that. So, okay, first of all, thank you. Number one, yes, I was at that time a little confused. The Article 13 that has been scrapped by the previous government, the Awami League's government, that had a opportunity for having a caretaker government or an interim government. But once that is scrapped, that was totally out of my mind. So now the Supreme Court has already made a petition. So once there is a hearing, so they will try to reinstate or restore the Article 13. The Article 13 is the Constitution, the caretaker government. So once there's a caretaker government, there will be legitimacy. Right now, it is absolutely true. I will not defend anybody that the government is a sort of like a revolutionary government. So obviously, many things are happening which is not in the Constitution, not in the norms, and of course, once the Supreme Court is able to restore the Article 13, which is the caretaker government, so only then there will be legitimacy to hold a proper election. But before the election, it already has been, the students have already had told, committed, whatever has been mentioned, that until there is a reform, which of course Yunus had also said the same thing, there will be no election. If we do not reform the commission, if we do not reform the election, the judiciary, and again it will be back to square one. So the certain political party who will come to power, they will dominate, and there will be a lot of greed. And first of all,
are you saying, Mr. Samad, that it can be a possibility that the new constitution will come in place and then the elections will happen? Is it possible?
No, that's impossible. The constitution has to be voted by the parliament. If they cannot, Yunus cabinet or the advisors or the students cannot raise their hand and say, yes, we agree with it. So there will be a draft and which will of course go to the constitution. But before that, I have an understanding that Dr. Ali Riaz, he's a very good friend of mine. He had just not told me details, but this draft will be circulated and this will possibly be rotating or discussed for next 1 year before they make it a final, so that the parliament can definitely debate on it and then pass the constitution.
Okay.
This government
a very quick question. You are also a scholar. Then I'll go to Suhas and then I'll go to Madam Sikri. Bangladesh was founded also in context of Bengaliness, its unique culture. Do you think that Bengaliness is being overtaken by religiosity, which is eroding that cultural core of Bangladesh, its Bengaliness, its language, its unique culture, subcontinental culture?
First, if I may allow to be respond. First of all, yes, in 1971, the Liberation War was not, of course, on the basis of Bengali nationalism, but this is also true that many non-Bengali speaking, like the Adivashis, for example, like of course, the Chakmas, the Tripuras, the Mandis, and as well as the other communities, they have also participated in the war, and their number is several thousand in the Mukti Bahini. So you cannot, they have not definitely fought the war for Bengali nationalism, for Bangladeshi. So it is a totally now definitely been debated. So yes, what has happened in the last since 1972, the Islamization of Bangladesh has rapidly taken over the country. And if you are aware that I went to prison because I reported on the Islamization, how Bangladesh has moved away from secularism to Islamization. So, and I went to prison in 2002. Yes, in 2002. So this is one issue that has to be also understood, and also has to be, of course, a concern that Islamization has taken over the entire country. If you look into the Bangladesh constitution, even the previous regime, the Awami League or Sheikh Hasina, could not dare to delete certain clause and the Bismillah Rahman Rahim and other things from the constitution. Till today, the Bangladesh television have azan during the azan time, the prayer time. So you can understand this has continued since the military regime has came into power. So, few things that has to be. Sheikh Hasina didn't dare to, in fact, anger the Islamic parties, especially the Hifazat Islam.
Very well nuanced point. Mr. Chakma, 1 minute to you, then I'll go to Madam Sikri. I think he summed it up pretty well, that there has been Islamization has taken place. Obviously, it has taken place at the cost of other communities, and I wouldn't use the word essence, it's very sociologically contested, but the core Bengali sense. Do you think it's this process is at a point where it cannot be reversed, something which has happened in Pakistan, Afghanistan?
Well, I completely agree with that assessment that there is no way Bangladesh can reverse this process of Islamization. But I think people had expected that this government is being led by somebody who is actually assumed or perceived as liberal. And somebody who would understand the responsibilities of the government of the day, being the head of the government. And we are in an extremely difficult situation. I think in an interview to the Voice of America on 2nd October, which was published, Dr. Yunus said on Chittagong tracks, he cannot decide on the Chittagong tracks because it's a prolonged problem and it has to be decided by the next elected government. So now for a head of the government, which is reforming the constitution, which is reforming the public administration, anti-corruption system, the entire state structure, they are reforming or coming out with reports. But when it comes to Chittagong tracks, he says that I will not touch Chittagong tracks. So we have been left to a situation saying that this particular region and its people cannot be part of the entire reform process which is going on inside the country. And that worries me because it sends a very clear message to the youths in the Chittagong tracks that you are not part of the country. So in one way, the indigenous peoples, the Chakmas and all other tribal groups have been saying, we want to be included in the country. We respect your religion. You are the majority community belonging to Islam religion. But we need to have our own space. And that means you have to include us. So you are not including the hill tribes in the constitutional drafting process, and you are not including in the governance process. Because when the chief of the head of the government says that I cannot deal with this issue, then where else do we go to?
Okay.
Where else the Chakras could go to?
A very strong point. Yes, obviously, this conversation is around Dr. Yunus. This is around Madam Sikri. A lot of people felt that when Dr. Yunus would come, he will bring in a healing touch. But the anxiety is that instead of creating a healing touch, making the best of what he have, the better of what is available, a political space is being created for forces if I may use the word reactionary, conservative and destabilizing.
Yes, I agree that today it is the Jamaat-e-Islami that seems to be fully in charge. And in fact, the Jamaat-e-Islami is pushing away their erstwhile ally, the Bangladesh National Party, pushing them out of the picture. There have been clashes between the two. And this is a worrisome situation, which I think many people in Bangladesh are worried about it also. And I would like to point out to Mr. Samad that the word secularism is still in the Bangladesh constitution. It was brought back into the constitution by former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, although some of the previous leaders had tried to remove it. So I think the people of Bangladesh value this retention of secularism in the constitution. And I would like to say that what you're showing in the visuals on your screen, that the minority communities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, they are protesting. They are saying that we are part of this country and we want to remain part of this country, part of Bangladesh. And we want to have our rights in Bangladesh. So the Buddhists are saying it in Kangrachari, in the Chittagong Hill Tract. The Hindus are saying it in Dhaka. The Bishop of Dhaka of Bangladesh has said that also. So I think there is a demand among the minority communities that they want to be part of the system. So I think just as the Jamaat-e-Islami Amir has given his own state reform, I think all the other communities are fully entitled to give their own reforms and to give their constitution which they want to have, and to say what kind of constitution they would like to have. And I would like to say that then in that case, as Suhas Shakma has correctly pointed out, how can Professor Mohammad Yunus say that the CHT matter will only be decided when the next constitution after parliament is formed, but every other matter, the Jamaat-e-Islami can give their own state reform proposal, or other communities can give their own state reform proposal. Then it seems to be that there's a massive referendum going on, that every political party is going to give its own proposals, and then it will be discussed. So I think if that is the procedure, then it should be stated for everybody to come in and give their proposals.
No, I completely agree with you, and I remember you telling me, madam, that this is not like the Sri Lankan movement, which restored the parliament. Aragalia movement, it restored the parliamentary democracy. I think this civic issue, the street protest has taken a completely different position. It is not that of Sri Lanka, as very well summed up by Madam Sikri previously in my discussion. I thank you, Ambassador Sikri, senior journalist Salim Samad, and Suhas Chakma, Director Rights, Risk and Analysis. There is great risk there's a great risk which minorities face today, and there is great anxiety in them in Bangladesh. Whether the fact of the matter is that you cannot imagine Bangladesh in absence of its minorities. It is like saying, can we imagine India without Buddhists, Muslims, Sikhs and other people? No, it cannot be. It's a multicultural society. Even in a city like Ayodhya, you have Jain and you have Buddhist narratives. Those histories existed. So similarly, Bangladesh without Hindus cannot be imagined unless and until it is radically reimagined and translated into something which Ziaul Haq did in Pakistan, or what Taliban is doing in Afghanistan. But that's a sorry road that will be taken, because Bangladesh as a country was founded on a very unique subcontinental Bengali identity, and that Bengali identity contains all the religion.